so I had a ton of opinions at this point in time of like how applications should be structured, how services should be structured. And I put all of that into just like building one thing, and AI helped sort of, um, build a lot of the stuff on top of it. And like that honestly just inspired me to just work on a whole bunch of other stuff. Like what I've been working on with UNMS today is literally taking pieces from what I've been working on and playing around with and like turning them into like products that other people could use too. And I really just lean into my opinions about things. If anything, it's like a trust exercise for me. It's just like
trusting your internal
yeah,
authority.
and like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I would much rather try to figure out how to trust it than to like try to figure out like what the right path is or whatever.
I don't know if you ever can. I feel like, I mean, it depends on what scale, right? Like I
Mhm.
think there's this like idea. It's like, different scales are not the same thing, right? Like
Mhm.
they're different. It's
Yeah.
like 10 people versus 100 people is not 10 times.
Mhm.
It's like a zebra versus an
Yeah.
elephant, right? It's like they're different animals.
Mhm.
So it's I think trusting that internal authority maybe comes at maybe smaller scales
Yeah.
or stuff like that. And then when you're having to size up and make big things, like there is more of that pressure that you
Mhm.
do have to figure out, okay, how does this actually serve X, Y, or Z?
Yeah.
But you did something interesting in Pile, which was like you open sourced it, and it kind of led me to this interesting thought where I was like, wow, there's this interesting world where you open source is kind of like an initial distribution model and audience building
Yeah.
mechanism, right? Because now I see a lot of software. I mean, I don't know if it was like this before, but I see so much software now where people have an open source version and then they're like, cool, go self-host it, do whatever you want. And then if you don't want to do any of that,
Yep.
just pay us,
Yeah.
right? So you did that with Pile, and it did kind of grow into quite a large project at the moment.
Yeah.
And that kind of allowed you to start building your audience.
Yeah, I feel like it really helped get my product out there. I think that like open source really is a thing of its own. Like people, there are lots of people that engage in open source, whether it's like through just sharing their opinions, like helping to like back testing, to like literally making stuff for those projects. Like the logo for Pile was just made by somebody that like I met on Twitter. And they were just like kind enough, hey, like I'll tweak the details. Like I found like an interesting icon. I looked up like who made it, and I talked to them, and like, hey, it's for an open source project, and they were like very happy to work on it for me. And it's fulfilling in its own sense, just like the community aspect of it, but it is also a great vehicle for getting an idea out there, especially if you're starting out and you like, especially if it's something that's like quite opinionated, if anything. Yeah, I know that sounds like a little counterintuitive. I thought it was counterintuitive, like especially when you open source something, you expect it to have like wide use, and like in a lot of ways it makes sense to like open source like a foundational framework of something that lots of people can add to, and then like everybody can get value out of it. And like it was less intuitive to me to think of it as like fully formed end product software, open sourced. And like how would that play out? I feel like I've learned like good things about it. Like good things are like people actually help, people actually like products like that. They tend to trust it more because they have some sort of transparency there. But it also makes other things a little difficult in terms of like, okay, it is an actually like very opinionated product. When somebody wants to add something, like I do find like it's harder to work things out, if anything. Because not everything will fit into that product. Like I had some strong opinions about like how simple it should be. And like maybe like I feel like part of the reason that product works is it is like dead simple. It's just a timeline you just post into it. Like I didn't want it to become a complicated product. I didn't like like it's the one product that I use almost every single day on and off again. Like I use it at least 4 or 5 times a week for like the last year and a half solid. And it's literally just because it's just a thread you just post into it, and that's really all you do with it. Um, and that's actually a different tangent almost, of like some ideas that I'm exploring on like very specific honed in software. Um, but going back to sort of the open source side of things, I think it really did help build a large audience around that product, and like has helped me with all of the other products that I've been building as well.
Yeah. Now you're working on research, which is this, like as I mentioned, kind of like sort of like way better PDF reader, because we still go to like archive and then get the PDF, and then but at the same time, at least in my experience reading research papers deeply, is that you kind of have to do this like little chained exercise where you're like, somebody makes a very, because one of the challenges with writing research papers is that they have to be very concise, right? So a lot of times there's just like a one line that's related to a previous paper that discusses some foundational idea, and unless you have that idea, you're like kind of lost. Like I think of a synthetic biology paper I read where they were talking about like crosstalk between certain genetic synthetic genetic material, and I was like, I don't know what that means. And then you kind of have to go read that other paper. Like it's like that backlink to the paper. You have to read that, and then it's like, okay, I have to go get that paper from there. And so you're kind of trying to build something that is like a little bit more friendly in that way.
Research really started out as like I found myself wanting to like learn more deeply about specifically like bioinformatics topics, especially with AI and LLMs. Like there was a lot of research coming out like literally every week, and it was almost like hard to keep up. It was actually quite hard. Like even if you read every day, it was quite hard. And I was like, I just want to cut the time. I don't want to read these things end to end. I want the core ideas. I want enough information to be like, I want it to be as practical as possible for me. Like I always, like even when I found it hard to read research papers just in like an open-ended sense, but I always find myself reading a lot when I like have a goal. Like I want to like explore like a product domain or something, and then I'm reading like it's so much more fun to read if anything.
Well, it's engaged, right?
Yeah,
Like
it's engaged,
there's
exactly. Yeah. And I wanted to just make something that like cut the time of like having to do this process by as much as possible.